Good evening. I'm Peter Hasland. Welcome to Global Dialogue. It's a program brought to you by the Center for Global Dialogue. Two members of the board of directors are with me tonight, and we thought we would talk a little bit about their experience, why they are part of this center, and what they've been doing with themselves in their so-called spare time. Akivah Northern is with me, as well as Mary Jo Terrill. Both of these wonderful people have been traveling a lot, mostly to Africa. And Mary Jo, you just came back from Rwanda. Now, why on earth would you go to Rwanda?
Well, I started traveling to Rwanda in 2006. It was my lifelong dream to go and work in Africa somewhere at some time, and I had given up hope of doing that. And then I got an opportunity to go with a small group as a social worker and do some trauma counseling training. So we went over, and once you go to Rwanda, you're hooked. You have to go back. So I went back a few more times.
Tell me more about that. That's really interesting. What is it that hooks you?
It's the people. They have been through so much since the genocide in 1994, and they have had so many losses, and they've had to rebuild their entire country. They've had to figure out a way to survive, and they still struggle with terrible transportation and not enough food sometimes, and not enough jobs, of course. And yet they are smiling, they are gentle, and they would do anything, for a visitor to help. If they have one bottle of water left, they'll give it to the visitor. They're so kind, they're so warm. They're like angels. So it just lifts you up when you're there. It lifts me up. It makes me feel happy. I'm always happy when I'm there. So when I come back here, then I miss it and I want to go back again.
And Akivah, you have recently been to Nigeria, which is, I think we even have a map of Nigeria to show the spatial relationship between the African continent and Nigeria. But why were you attracted to Nigeria?
Well, I'm always attracted to going back to Africa. I actually lived in Africa in the 70s for 5 years. And this sense of hospitality that Mary Jo is talking about is so pervasive in Africa. It's very much ingrained in the way people treat strangers and foreigners. I had that same experience. We were on the bus, and there's one Fanta, which is a soda, and it gets passed around and everybody gets a share. It's that sense of you are part of me and I'm going to take care of you. And so I love that. But Nigeria this time was a calling. I'm a chaplain, so I listened to a higher calling often, and it was a calling to just see actually what one man or one person can do. So we went to a celebration of a well that was dug there 100 years ago. And that well was dug by someone who came from my denomination as a missionary. And now there are hundreds of thousands of Seventh-day Adventists in the country, and clinics and hospitals and universities, and just the work has exponentially grown. So I went to celebrate this 100th anniversary of this digging of a well, starting one school, and just seeing what one person's, caring for,
Tell me about the school. What kind of school, and what purpose does it serve?
Well, he just started an elementary school. That he dug this well, and people came for the water, and he started one elementary school teaching language, teaching subjects, and then he started another one, and now there's a huge university there. Babcock University has 10,000 Nigerian students with medical school, law school, nursing school, dental school. It's just amazing how the work of the denomination has exponentially grown, and they're Nigerians now who are teaching and administrating the university.
Is there funding coming from the government, or how does that work?
It's a private university. They get funding because they're a very wealthy country, so they get some funding from Nigeria is still divided into kingdoms, so they get some funding from the kings, and we met some kings, and they get funding from the government, from private funders, and then they get some from the denomination. And so they're growing exponentially.
Though Nigeria is as you say, quite a wealthy, largely because of the oil that's to be
Exactly.
found there.
Exactly.
Rwanda is anything but rich. So how does the Rwandan, I mean, we hear a lot about the transformation of the Rwandan economy, and it appears to be moving in a positive direction. What evidence did you see of that?
Well, it is. The development has increased a lot, and the country receives 40% of its financial support from the United States, and I believe it's 40% just from the United States, but certainly from outside the country. They've just had an increase in building. Beautiful buildings are going up. The roads have been improved. There is still a great need for improvement of the roads. The transportation, once you get away from the main arteries of the city, is very difficult. It's even hard to walk. But in the main part of the city, it's beautiful. Hotels and homes and schools. 2 hospitals have been built in the country by Partners in Health, which is the group that was started by Paul Farmer. And there are many other hospitals and clinics. So everything is moving upward. The education, there are more children in school. All of the people have an opportunity to receive health care of some sort. And it's going so fast. You know, it's changed a lot just since I was there.
Say a word or two about Paul Farmer. Who is he?
Paul Farmer is the doctor who, when he was in medical school or was a resident at Harvard University, went down to Haiti and realized that the people were suffering from multi-drug resistant tuberculosis, and that if something wasn't done, it would spread. And people said, oh, those people, they're not going to take the medicine because it would require a medical regimen of several medications to cure them. They won't take the medicine, and it's hopeless, and you're wasting your time. Just let them be. And he said, no, if we don't eradicate this now and get on top of it, it will spread all over the world. But I think he was motivated by a real concern for the people of Haiti. He wanted to help them. Then there was a prison in Russia that had the same problem, so he went there and helped them. And then he eventually went to Rwanda, and at the same time, the group was formed out of Boston called Partners in Health. And Partners in Health, along with some Americans, went in and built a hospital on the eastern side of Rwanda.
The other Western.
Yeah, right. Near the Akivah Game Park, they built a very nice hospital where I've been able to work and volunteer. And then they have another hospital in the north in Butaro. So, and there are constantly visiting doctors going over and nurses from the United States, from England, from Australia, a lot of different countries send people over for short-term service to work in those hospitals. And, you know, we learn from them. I mean, I learned a lot working alongside their nurses. So it isn't just a one-way thing. We go and share information and share experiences.
Is there a sense in either country of sharing with others? Is there a sense of being African as opposed to being just Nigerian or just Rwandan?
That's a great question. I know for Nigeria, they do have a sense, a Pan-African sense, and they always have. I remember 1977 was the first time I went to Nigeria. Well, actually, we went to in 72 as tourists, but we went back for the Festival of Arts and Culture. And they had invited people of African descent from all over the world. And the government actually funded this month-long celebration of African culture, of art, dance, music. It was just phenomenal. But this university, Babcock University, for example, they just started. It's a brand new medical school, and you cannot get into the medical school unless you commit to be a medical missionary for Africa. So they don't want the students who graduate from Babcock, well, it's called the Ben Carson School of Medicine. They want those students to commit, when they're finished medical school, to actually work as missionaries in Africa. And so they're training them. And they do have that sense that they have a responsibility because they have an advanced educational system, they have a medical school, they have hospitals, they have clinics. And so they do have that sense of wanting to help the other countries of Africa who don't have that. And, you know, we just look forward to those missionary doctors. And I met them, young, bright, beautiful young Nigerian students, very smart. I mean, because they have to, the standard is the European medical school. The Nigerian standard is like the medical schools in Britain. And, you know, they're bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and ready to serve others.
Well, the reason for my question is that up until after World War II, Africa was essentially a continent to be divided and conquered by Europeans who would treat this entire continent as a semblance of their colonial empire, whether it was Britain or France or Belgium or Portugal or Germany. They all had their colonies, and they drew lines that now represent national boundaries that had nothing to do with the tribal communities. And when you talked about the kingdoms, I'm guessing you're talking about these tribal communities within Nigeria.
Well, yes, the kingdoms are territories that were controlled by the particular group of people. But for example, we went to visit a king who's a descendant of the Benin civilization. So they're not tribal in the sense that, you know, they were very advanced, you know, civilizations. The Benin, you know, they had art and music and just medicine. And so these kingdoms are still there. And they serve the people in that area. For example, the king that we went to visit, there's a Seventh-day Adventist hospital in his kingdom. He's very happy about that because they bring the nursing school, they bring the medical people from all over to serve people in their kingdom. So you get the sense that they do care. We visited another king the last time I was there who was a judge in England minding his business, and he was part of that particular tribe, and they voted him to be king. And he had to come back from England. He was a retired judge, he and his wife, to be kings. And they live in a very humble home, but they serve their people. And they've donated all of the land for Babcock University. So you get the sense that they really have an agenda to move forward and to help each other.
How does this compare with your experience in Rwanda?
Well, Rwanda is working on unification. Rwanda is trying to help the people with forgiveness because neighbors killed neighbors in the genocide, and now people live with people that have killed their family members. And they can't put all these people in jail. I mean, it was a slaughter, and the people themselves don't even understand why it happened or how it happened. So what they've done is work out ways of having the perpetrators go to jail for a short time, and then they've been set free. So they live back in the communities where they used to live. And people have to forgive them. They have to forgive and kind of push it back because otherwise they can't survive. No one wants any more fighting or killing. And they do gacaca courts, which are neighborhood courts held on the grass. We were privileged to attend one time in Kibungo. And they have officials who come, they have a judge, they have a panel, and they present cases at the gacaca court. And then they ask for witnesses. Is there anyone who can speak for this person who's being accused? And they come to a decision as to whether this person should be pardoned or not, right there at the gacaca court. And it's very local. And sometimes they're let go that day from jail. And so all the people support this process, I would say, most of the people. They want peace. They don't want any more fighting. They realize it won't get them anywhere. So their energy is going into building schools and building hospitals and trying to get help from the government for the roads, which they're getting gradually. And they're all looking to the future for the children because the majority of the population is very young. So they have to think about creating cities and towns where these children can work and thrive as they grow up. And I think, you wouldn't see this great spirit. They're not downtrodden as they go about their day. You have a wonderful spirit of cooperation and reaching out to each other. And I've never seen any meanness toward anyone there.
So it's like the South African experience of national reconciliation. These courts would allow for that kind of reconciliation, for the open forgiveness of one by the other? Yeah.
They resolve. It's more of a resolution at the courts. Because sometimes someone's been put in jail and accused unfairly. And if witnesses come forth and say, no, he didn't do that, I was there, it was someone else, it wasn't him, and then that person is released. And everybody gets to speak at Gacaca Court. So, and they sit on the grass. They just come and put blankets on the grass and sit there with their children. And the judges and the board of people sit at a table up in front, and they do it regularly. So that at least they have a vehicle if they have a complaint or a problem that they can come there with it to have it resolved.
Well, now both of you have volunteered to serve on the Center for Global Dialogue Board of Directors. What is it that the center does? What are your expectations of the center?
Well, I think what we do is we try to bring the capacity in Santa Barbara for having dialogues that might be polarized anywhere else or might not even take place in the same room. And we try to bring two people together that have totally opposite opinions and dialogue about global issues around bringing polarized, two poles together. And I really like that. That's kind of how I operate. I really like that. And, I think we've had some successful topics, and we've had, we haven't had any fireworks, but we've had some real dialogue that you might think would polarize people, but that really informs. And we have a narrator who brings that conversation together. And also lately we've been having question and answer from the audience, which I really like. So if you come with a particular opinion, you can ask either side and you get your answer. So I like the fact that globally we have to talk to people that we don't agree with. About global issues. And we have to do it locally too. And
but isn't it a little presumptuous to have the Center for Global Dialogue right here in Santa Barbara?
Well, I don't think so. I think there aren't any centers like that. And so if we call ourselves the center, I think that's okay. We're doing something very unique. So maybe if there were other centers springing up, that would be great. Global Dialogue 2 and 3. But I think right now we're doing something because we are trying to have that dialogue as we deal with different topics.
What brings you to the table, Mary Jo?
Well, I think it's the same thing. I am a resident of Santa Barbara. I work in Santa Barbara. I love Santa Barbara. But it's very easy to be isolated here. And this is a little paradise, and it's very easy to just go through your week and work and pay your bills and relax at the beach with your family and not think about what's on the other side of the mountains. And I have that thirst to know about what's going on in the world and to feel that I'm a part of the future of peacemaking. Because without peace, nothing's going to work. And so the way that we make peace is we dialogue. We talk with other people and say, well, here's what I know and here's what I think. What do you think? We come to the gatherings of the Center for Global Dialogue to learn. We have very experienced, educated speakers who talk to us and tell us things that we didn't know before. And then we debate about what they say. And where else can you do that, I love it. I love being part of the group that arranges these programs and looks at these very timely subjects that Santa Barbara has to be concerned about that relate to the world.
Yeah, the assumption is that all of us are citizens, global citizens. We're American citizens, but we also have sort of a stake in this global enterprise, and how can we do that unless we know about stuff? Now, some of the programs that we've had get kind of complicated, and I remember one that was focusing on the future direction of a global economy. Unfortunately, we had two people speaking who spoke not in economics, but they spoke in English, and that was a really helpful thing. What sorts of programs should we be thinking about for the future? What do you think? If you were to wave your magic wand and come up with, we really ought to focus on that, what would you think would be a suitable topic?
Well, I really like because I travel a lot globally in Europe and China and Africa. I would like to see more diversity in terms of who we are speaking to and who we're bringing into the center, bringing people from other countries, because we've had a lot of American speakers, but actually dialoguing with people from other countries, people whose voices we don't normally hear. Because I hear these voices as I travel, but you don't hear them on American television, and you don't hear them in Santa Barbara, because we are very monolithic in some ways, even though we have diversity, but it's not as rich as when you go out. So, for example, I would like to see Chinese. I would definitely like to see a global dialogue going on between a Chinese person and a Vietnamese person, for example, which happens at my table all the time because I have foreign students. And the Vietnamese and Chinese students will say to me, I've never spoken to a Chinese person. I've never spoken to a Vietnamese person. So at the first time at my table, they're speaking to one another. Well, we've never spoken to a Chinese person. I know you have, Peter, because you've traveled there. So just global dialoguing with people also from other parts of the world, just hearing their stories, hearing their challenges, hearing their victories. Seeing them, for example, this king and his wife. I had never met a king, a real king. And just, to meet a king that gave up all of their wealth, all of their position in England to come to serve their people. What's that like? So, yeah, I'd like to hear some voices from other countries.
Mary Jo, do you have any thoughts about who you'd like to see at our dialogues?
About who I would like to see?
Who or what?
Yeah. I just think we have to keep addressing the major problems that face the world. I think nuclear disarmament is a huge question. It threatens the entire world. It threatens our safety and security. The climate change questions threaten the entire world, threaten everything that we have. And I think anything that we can do that fosters peace, because if we don't have peace, and if we don't cut back on the weapons and cut back on the idea that we always need to be ready to fight, we aren't going to really move forward and make progress in our society, in the world. We have to just chip away at that idea that fighting, killing, dominating is the only way to go, and that's why we exist. We have to build something for the future, and we have to help each other. We have to realize that every person's life matters, no matter what country they're from.
If you engage in dialogue with national leaders, I seriously doubt that you'll find any one of them saying, I favor war. Mm-hmm. Everybody wants peace. And if that's really true, and I think it is, how come we don't have it?
Well, I don't think we're intentional about having peace. Since we know how to fight, when something comes up, it's easy to fight. But unless you're intentional about how to have peace, you're not going to get there. It's just going to be some ideal that people say, oh, we can't achieve. We actually need a Department of Peace in America. We have a Department of Defense. We have a war. We have the military. We need people who will understand that we have some of the most valuable resources to bring peace. People want the culture of America. They want the music. They want so much that we have here, but we're not sort of maybe using that in a way that would bring peace. I've always dreamed of having a concert, when Michael Jackson was alive, this is a long time ago, in Israel and Palestine, just, the kids would come, so I think the weapons that we have to be intentional about peace and using tools that will bring peace. And I don't think we, as human beings, I always say there's no races, there's the human race, and different ethnicities and nationalities. We don't really have the skills that we need. We can go to the moon, but we don't know how to really resolve issues that we fight over now. We have peacekeeping, but that doesn't work. And we need to be intentional.
Let's take that one step further. Let's be intentional. Let's learn how to resolve conflict. Where do we start? How do we have so many variables in our society that mitigate against conflict resolution and in favor of struggle and victory in one sense or another. How do we move to where you want to go?
I think we have to make a decision at a national level and a personal level. For example, in Switzerland, even though they're not the best example, but they don't have an army that will fight. That was a decision that they made, that we are not going to do this. Now, I happen to be familiar with some families in Switzerland. Father told his children when they were fighting, we don't fight. So you can talk, you can disagree, you can argue, but we don't fight in this house. So it's a personal decision, it's a national decision, it becomes cultural, it becomes part of who we are. I think we have to really make some serious decisions, and they're going to be scary. You're not going to fight, you're not going to have weapons, but I think we have to, at some point, draw that line.
We're coming to the end of our program. Did you want to add your 2 bits for the cause?
Well, I agree with Akivah. I think that's right, and I think that's part of why we're in the Global Dialogue, the Center for Global Dialogue, why we work so hard, because we want to be on that path to peace and understanding.
Yeah, we certainly have much to discuss at the Center for Global Dialogue.
Yes.
Thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
We
Thank
hope
you,
that you will
Peter.
join us again next month for another edition of Global Dialogue. Good night.